Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Self-Destruction by the Imperator AMORC. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 15, Number 10, November 1937. The Thought of the Month, Self-Destruction by the Imperator AMORC. Every occultist and student of universal laws knows that one of the surest ways of destroying one's future possibilities and bringing annihilation and suffering and sorrow to an individual, a group of individuals, or a nation of individuals is for the individual or group or nation to impose upon humanity any restrictions or limitations to the universal law of the free exercise of human rights and spiritual development. Every individual has the cosmic, universal, God-given right to live and enjoy the blessings of life and to interpret and comprehend the spiritual laws of the universe and attune himself with them and with God. Such rights and privileges include, of course, the further right to worship God in the light of such interpretation and comprehension, and to give the soul of each individual an opportunity to expand and unfold, and to indulge in such practices, customs, habits, and indulgences as bring peace and happiness to the soul, illumination and contentment to the mind, nourishment and health to the body. When an individual, regardless of any claims to temporal or spiritual authority, attempts to restrict or restrain such rights and privileges of any human being or group of human beings, he brings upon himself and upon the worldly factors and conditions under his control, not the wrath of God or the wrath of the cosmic, but the inevitable operation of laws which he has set into motion, resulting in a stay of all progress, a retrogression of all development, and ultimate destruction and calamity. Looking back through the history of the ages, it is an easy matter to trace the manifestation of this fact in the individual record of nations or of countries of peoples, where an attempt has been made to restrict religious and spiritual worship and development. Evidently one sure way for a king or a queen, a ruler or a potentate, to bring annihilation or retrogression, defeat and loss of prestige and power to the nation under his control and direction, has been to interfere with these religious rights and privileges and to restrain or restrict the other God-given blessings of life. Not a single nation which has indulged in such restrictions in the past centuries has avoided such calamity and has been able to retrieve its power and revive its existence only by abandoning the unfortunate and unfair restrictions and restoring to its people the privileges which it had taken away from them. Today we find throughout the world many notable, astonishing, and regrettable examples of the failure to realize the operation of the cosmic law in this regard. In parts of Europe today, various nations of peoples and races devoted to the practice of certain religious rites or the indulgence in certain spiritual privileges are having these privileges restricted or completely restrained, and their minds and souls tormented by evidences of intolerance and religious and racial persecution. The fate of these countries is inevitable. They may seem to prosper and succeed, and to build up or create new power, new energy, new material integrity for a time. But the handwriting on the wall is perfectly plain, and the cosmic law is always fulfilled. Take, for example, the suffering that is being placed upon the Jews in various parts of Europe and Asia. First, because of their racial inheritance, and secondly, because of their religious preferences. The history of the Jews is fraught with the most outstanding examples of religious and racial persecution that the world has ever known. Today they are practically a race without a country and without a flag. Century after century they have been chased or forced to move from land to land, from district to district, with all their divine rights and privileges wholly ignored, and with a form of hatred created against them that is as unwarranted, as undeserved, and as unworthy of the dignities of the human consciousness as anything that the world has ever witnessed. The constant pointing out of the sins and errors of some of the Jews as being typical of all them, The exploitation of the weakness of some in their race, as being universal among all of them, is as unreasonable and illogical as any form of propaganda that the human mind has been asked to accept. That there are errors in the lives of Jews, that some of them are sinful or deceitful or given to business and politics and political practices that are questionable, is undoubtedly true. But are these living examples of sin and error, deceit and fraud any more numerous among those of the Jewish race than among those of the Gentile? Or any more numerous among the Jews than among the Mohammedans, the Buddhists, the Roman Catholics, the Protestants, or even the heathens? And a careful study of the history of the Jews plainly reveals to the unbiased, unprejudiced mind that the attitude of many nations and many religions towards the Jews has forced them, as a matter of self-protection and self-preservation, as individuals and as a race, to anticipate all the trickery, all the deceit, all the fraud, and all the means of insidious persecution on the part of other races and other religions, and to meet with this counter-deceit, counter-fraud, and counter-errors. The natural instinct developed from the God-given right to live and enjoy the privilege of life and to fight for that which is an inalienable right is acknowledged by law to be a perfectly proper and legal definition for many infractions of the human code of life. Although our general courts of law and our codes of life forbid murder or taking of another person's life, we do condone it and forgive it when it is motivated by self-preservation and committed as the last resort in the process of self-defense. When a large nation of peoples who have contributed so greatly to the success and happiness of civilization, to the development of its arts and literature, to the creation of cities and towns, to the fostering of spiritual ideals, to the defense of civilization itself, is constantly subjected to the machinations of the secret activities, public restrictions, political persecutions, and the defeat of its natural rights, it is bound to develop in the hearts and minds of such a nation of peoples the determination to survive and to conquer and at least preserve itself by any means or methods that will prove efficient. In other words, the attitude of those who bring persecution upon such a race or class of people is a challenge to them, and not only an invitation, but a direct cause for such retaliant or self-protection and counter activities as the nation may decide upon. If the Jews at any time in the past history, or at the present time in any country or any part of the world, are insidiously and secretly planning to strengthen their nation, or if individual Jews or groups of Jews are privately and systematically attempting to gain greater temporal, financial, or religious power, they are only doing what the rest of the world has forced them to do and has made it necessary for them to do. After all, the Christians, too, at various times have suffered horrible persecutions, and it is doubtful if the Jews or the Roman Catholics, the Buddhists or the Mohammedans, or any organized group of heathens so-called, have ever resorted to the secret, hidden, undercover campaigns of self-protection and retaliation that the Christians resorted to in past centuries. And even today, there are parts of the world where the Christians have to resort to every method of political diplomacy, human deception, and actual warfare to preserve their rights and privileges, without any intention of being specifically critical or irreverential in my love for the ideals of Christianity. I must admit, and so must you, that more horrible wars and forms of persecution have at times been conducted by, supported by, and indulged in by Christian denominations than any other religious sect, except possibly some of the older Oriental or so-called heathen sects. But the Roman Catholics, too, have had their share, and still have it, of religious persecution and unfair resentment and restriction. Even in our enlightened country of America and in other enlightened countries, there is at this very hour a contention of an old age contest between Roman Catholicism and other religions or other sects of the Christian religion. In every political campaign, in every nationwide movement of a political, financial, or social nature, individuals and groups of individuals are sure to inject the religious question. And if it is not the Jews who are painted as a horrible example of seekers for political and social control, it is the Roman Catholics. Yet here again we find not merely a nation of people, but nations of peoples, all of one Christian, sectarian religion, who have contributed magnificently to the art and literature, the architecture and the fine arts, the spiritual and the physical development of civilization, for which all nations and all religions should be appreciative and never forget them. And in parts of the Near East we find the Arabs and other nations or divisions of nations being persecuted and religiously tormented because of their distinction in social class or religious class. While the reports from Germany regarding the persecution of the Jews and certain other religious, social, ethical, or moral movements are undoubtedly exaggerated in our modern newspapers and in propaganda booklets and pamphlets, the fact does remain that the Jews in Germany and other classes of individuals have been tormented to the point of suffering the fires of hell because of the dictates of one man or a small group of men based upon their personal opinions and prejudices. All the world would like to see the German nation and the German country come back to its own former political strength and social happiness and human integrity. The quick manner in which America and the other nations which were at war with Germany during the period from 1914 to 1918 laid aside their temporary enmity and extended the hand of fellowship and goodwill to Germany, proved that neither religion nor social distinctions had any place in the fundamental cause of the war. Today, the German citizen or the German American citizen has a kindly and brotherly place in the hearts of Americans and most of the civilized world. But Germany's growth and development to a point and place in the world which she occupied previously or to a greater place is being frustrated, surely and definitely, and not too slowly. But the present unfortunate and unfair restrictions and restraints placed not only upon the Jews, but upon many other groups and divisions of her people. This attitude on the part of the German government is gradually spelling doom and defeat to the nation as a whole, and it is more for this reason that thousands upon thousands of Germans, both Jews and Gentiles, and Roman Catholics, are excavating Germany and going to other parts of the world than just because of the persecutions of the Jews alone. We believe that Russia, approaching the darkness of the obscure night out of which it could never have come into a golden dawn, realized that it had taken the one sure way to defeat all of its ambitions and to destroy its prosperity and power, and therefore withdrew some of its religious restrictions and has shown some little degree of tolerance in recent months towards those whom it formerly persecuted and prosecuted for differences of opinion. But nevertheless, Russia created for itself, in the process of destroying churches, temples, synagogues, and cathedrals, and in restricting religious freedom, a karmic condition for which it must make compensation someday. And until that compensation is made, Russia can never become the great power that even its most ambitious leaders and directors are striving to create. For this reason, Russia must expect throughout its nation and in all of its political activities the same degree of suffering and sorrow in the near future as it has put upon its people in the recent past. These scales must be balanced and adjustment made before Russia or any other country can be reborn and begin a new constructive and happy life. We may pray for universal peace and we may strive to invent every political and social scheme to bring about a closer understanding of the political issues and the economic problems of the different countries, in the belief that if these things are solved or accomplished in contentment and mutual agreement, we will eliminate the cause of war. But it is useless to pray to God to bring peace into the heart of man, while man continues to be intolerant of the quantity of blood and the nature of religion in the bodies and souls of other individuals. From the time of the earliest persecutions of the priesthood in Egypt up to this very hour, religious intolerance and racial incompatibility have been the two outstanding causes of more war, more loss of human life, more destruction of property, more ruination of countries, and more restraint in the progress and development of civilization than any other two factors, despite the argument of economicists and socialists who claim that the laboring conditions and the power of capital are the principal causes of human suffering and unhappiness. There can be no peace politically, socially, mentally, or spiritually until the human brotherhood of man is established upon the basis of equal rights, equal privileges, and equal blessings to all of God's children. In the eyes of God, there is no distinction between Jew and Gentile, Roman Catholic and Protestant, Mohammedan or Buddhist, or even the heathen. All are created in the image of God and in some stage of the self-same process of human and spiritual development, until we, the elements of the universal kingdom of God, have the same tolerance, the same love, the same mercy, and manifest it towards one another as God manifested towards us. There can be no universal peace, or any nation or dictator of a nation, ruler or king, who is unmindful of this law or violates this principle is bringing inevitable doom and distress to himself and to his people. It is the one sure way of self-destruction. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.